بسم الله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع سنته إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you again with the greetings of peace, and we praise Allah and send peace and blessings upon His last and final Prophet, the Prophet Muhammad. Welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week. Now, in previous episodes, we've had some new Muslim stories, and we like every now and again to bring you, the viewers, a story of someone who has embraced this beautiful religion. Very inspiring, very motivating, very spiritual stories. And today, I have with me a brother Abdullah Shetty. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Abdullah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for calling me here, inshallah.
Of course, as you mentioned, you accepted Islam, and your name now is Abdullah.
Alhamdulillah.
So please, obviously previous I believe was Ashish?
Ashish.
That's
yes.
right. So please, tell us about a bit about yourself, first of all, where you're from, and your education, just the standard kind of information.
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Abdullah Shetty. Previously it was Ashish Shetty, and I come from a place called Udupi. It is called as the temple city of southern part of India. I was born in a Hindu family, and we were not much religious as such. But then since childhood, I always had this desire to know about what is life all about. Most people, they have these questions within them about why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Is life all about living and dying? What happens next? But then over time, because they get busy in the dunya, they forget all these questions, and then they try to concentrate on what is there in this world. However, I actually wanted to look for these answers. So I started going to all different temples in the southern part of India. If you name.
So when you said the place you're from is the temple city of South India, literally because there are so many Hindu temples? Or?
Like how you find masjids over here in Dubai, it's the same over there, but it's
so
temples.
It's famous for that, basically, for being a center point of the Hindu faith.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So I started visiting different temples in different parts of India, trying to know what is the right way about living life here. And then over a period of time, after doing all this, you realize that there isn't much in the foundation itself. Like I remember one day I was sitting there and looking at we have this photo frames of gods, the so-called gods at our homes. So I was just looking at it, and I was thinking to myself, the photos, they have dust on top of it. And the god the god that we were worshipping, the so-called god, is not even able to remove those dust on top of the photos. So I was wondering, if he is not able to do that, how will he be able to help me? So from there onwards, I thought, the direction that I'm taking in my search of truth is not right.
So how old were you at this stage when you started to go for this kind of searching process?
I think I was around 13, 14.
13, 14.
Yeah. The same age when you became Muslim.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that point of time, there was this group called, there's a group, I better not name them. And this group, they call people towards worshipping one God. And they say there is only one God. So I thought, this is the way, and this has to be the right path. I joined this group, and then we did some courses with them. And then finally they say me that the name of this god is Shiva. This is the same Hindu god that I left before, and now they tell me this is the name of the god. And then they had this course where a young lady sits on the chair, and all other people sit down and they stare at her. And I asked them what's happening. So they tell me that there is positive vibrations passing between the eyes of the young lady and the people sitting below. So it doesn't make sense. I immediately came to know why everybody around me was there for. So after leaving that group, I was studying in a Christian school, and you must be knowing it very well that they're very good with their manners, very good with the way they treat you. They call you for Christmas. They give you gifts. So I thought, these people are so nice. So this has to be the right way, and there's no other way. So I spoke to one of my friend, a Christian friend, and I got the Bible. The Bible is as such that the moment you open it, it says revised edition. And then that's when you start thinking, if this is a revised book, it cannot be from God, because if it's from God, nobody's going to revise it. It's going to be the way it is. And the concept of 3 being 1 and 1 being 3, I was quite young. It doesn't make sense to me. I wanted something that's simple. And I had assumed that if there was something, it would be simple for every layman to understand. It does not have to be something complicated.
And I mean, that's a very important point. I mean, you know, we as Muslims, you know, we say that the fundamental belief that we are supposed as mankind to believe in has to be understandable. Yeah. There will be elements, obviously, of the unseen that we can't see paradise.
Exactly.
We can't see God, you know, Allah Himself.
Exactly.
But something that we are supposed to fundamentally believe to be our salvation, about God Himself, this has to be understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
He Himself will make it. It's not just blind following. There has to be blind following, and it has to be rational.
Yes.
It makes sense to us.
Yes.
So that's very important, because I myself, like you said, I had that concept as well, that it just didn't make sense. How is God 1 but 3, but He's still 1? And all those kind of weird concepts. Like you said, the God being the God is an idol or a picture.
Yeah.
So that's a very important point, that lots of people, this is what wakes them up, you know, because it's naturally in their heart, as we know from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said that every child is born upon this natural inclination that there is only one God, but it's only his family or his society that mold him into some other kind of belief.
Exactly. So after trying to know about Christianity and then realizing that this doesn't make sense to me, and it's a bit complicated, and this whole concept is if the foundation is clear, everything else is going to be clear. But when you don't understand the foundation, it means that everything else you don't have to look into it. So I joined college, and in college I thought that I did my search and I couldn't find anything. So this dunya is everything, this world is everything, and you have fun, enjoy, do whatever you want. So I chose the other path. Like if you want to put it in this way, it was from worshipping 3,333 lakh gods, then it came to worshipping 3, and then finally I jumped into 0, and I became an atheist, and I started thinking that there's no God. This life is all about it, and do whatever you want in this world, and then that's it. So I chose the wrong path. I went with the wrong people. My family started hating me, and I was doing bad at my studies. And at that point of time, I was working as a VJ for a music channel. I wanted to become a DJ. I was learning drums and all this stuff. But over a period of time, when you have done everything, you sit back and then you start wondering, is this all? And what's next? I've done everything. What's next? Where do I go? And you start feeling that there's no meaning to life, because the one in front of you thinks that you're cool, you're enjoying, you're having fun, you're doing the best you can do. But deep within you, you know that you're not happy. Deep within you, you know that there's no satisfaction. After you do all the sins and go back home, you don't find that peace and happiness.
And that's a very good point, because we see so many, without mentioning names, we see so many Hollywood actors, famous film stars. And I remember one of them, a very, very famous American Hollywood actor, and he's a comedian. And he makes his money by making people laugh. And if you see this man, you think he must be one of the most happiest, cheerful people, because he's such a funny guy. He cheers other people up with his comedy. And he came actually on a TV show one time and said, even though he's got, he's got so much fame, so much money, as they say, he has all that money can buy, but he said that I feel so empty inside, I've contemplated committing suicide. And if we see only a few months ago, a very famous singer was found dead in her bathtub. Again, has everything that she needed, but she died taking combination of drugs because of depression. And we see so many of these, we hear every now and again. And they have all the wealth, they have all the fame, they have all the private jets, like you said, but that's not the ultimate. So they can never reach that total happiness. As they say, like, money doesn't buy happiness.
So at that point of time, people get into a state of deceiving the whole world. They're able to deceive the whole world that they're happy and having the best time. But then deep within you, you know that you haven't got the true happiness. So you might ask now, why I didn't look into Islam. There are so many reasons for not looking into Islam. One of the reasons was the Muslim friends that I had. I couldn't make out any difference between me and them. We used to do all the same things, and there wasn't anything special about them that stood out for me to know that there's something, they're different from us. And then the other thing was, the media, the role that the media plays in trying to portray Islam and Muslims in a bad way. The moment you think about Muslims, the only thing that comes into your mind was terrorism and the oppression of women and all these things. And since I come from the place where it's more communal, the tension is very high between Hindus and Muslims, I had certain relatives who used to always tell me, they didn't tell me that come first in class, they used to tell me, make sure you get more than that Muslim guy in your class. So it wasn't about that they are more practicing about their religion or something, but it's just that they had hatreds towards the Muslims. And this was what they had fed me. But however, since I had Muslim friends, I realized they're just normal people like us. There's nothing wrong with them. So, and then, especially the Bollywood movies that we watch, you could see that they go to the shrine, they go to the graves, and then they start, asking the dead, and then they dance around. And this is the way Islam is being portrayed over there. So you think that, what's this?
So I mean, again, this points to a very important factor, that how the Muslims carry themselves has a very big effect, because you started off by saying you had Muslim friends, but they were doing everything you were doing. So this shows us that how many of us Muslims, we are not, we are giving Islam a bad name. We are not showing the people the reality of Islam. So we are doing, so many Muslims are doing the alcohol, they're doing the drugs, they're doing all the bad things that they're not supposed to do. So again, you were like, well, why would I look at Islam? These guys are just doing all the bad stuff, so there's nothing special about their religion. And like you mentioned, then you have the other, unfortunately, people who pray, but they are doing things that are completely forbidden in Islam, because we know that things like grave worship, even praying to the Prophet Muhammad, praying to any holy man, is completely forbidden in Islam. And this is what the Prophet Muhammad came to, the message of Islam, and he came and he told people, do not take my grave as a place of worship. His grave, the best to walk on this earth. So what about all these other saints and these other mullahs and stuff? So again, one side you had the unpracticing Muslims, and then you had the people who are Muslims but practicing various heretic practices. So both of those took you away from finding out Islam.
Exactly. So, like how you told me all these things, at that point of time I didn't have anybody to tell me all this. However, in college I met a Muslim guy, and we started discussing about so many things, cars, girls and all this stuff, and one fine day the topic of religion came up. And that's when he told me that, do you know that Muslims worship the one true God? I was blown off. I always had assumed that, you find the star and the moon on top of the masajid. I always assumed that this has to be their God. Like my family, they think that since you find Muslims praying in front of the wall, they think that they worship the wall. And some of my relatives, they have this idea that Muslims are the most dirtiest people on the earth. It's because of people around them. It's because of what we are exposed to. Maybe there are good Muslims out there, but we weren't exposed to such people over there.
And what's interesting to mention about, you mentioned on the mosque, and you notice that, many mosques nowadays don't have that, but you notice that this again is something that was added by the Ottoman Empire. They maybe you could say their intention was good in the beginning, but they saw that, for example, in Christianity there was a symbol, there was a cross. And there is the Jewish star, so they felt that they had to. Let's have something. Or the Hindu so they felt that they had to have something. So they thought, the lunar calendar, we'll put the star and the crescent. And like you mentioned about, people have this assumption that because we bow down in the direction of the Kaaba, the black cubical building in Mecca, that we're worshipping it. Or I've heard stories that some people actually believe that there are idols were stolen from India, and a Hindu idol, and you find it in the Kaaba. But what you can do, anybody who has that kind of belief or thinks that maybe we worship some form of idol, or Allah is the chief God of the idols, and and all of this, you can go to YouTube now and you can actually type inside the Kaaba. And you will see a man who took his mobile in there, and it's just an empty. It's got some ceramic tiles, some inscriptions in gold, but there's no idols whatsoever. So, a lot of people have those kind of misconceptions.
So, that's when I started asking him more questions. In the initial stage, I thought, this guy, he isn't practicing his religion much. Let me invite him to Hinduism. Although I wasn't a Hindu, It's just that the ego plays in between, and that's when you start thinking that let me try to win this argument, even though I know that my religion doesn't make sense to me. Let me win this argument. I started putting all the questions like terrorism, for marriages, and all different issues that generally people have. And subhanAllah, he gave me answers for everything. I was just amazed that first I thought maybe he's trying to make up stories. So I went online, did my own research. But alhamdulillah, although there are so many wrong stuff out there on the internet, Allah guided me to some right sites. SubhanAllah, it was Allah's guidance that I ended up in the right sites, getting the right answers. And that's when I thought, okay, he's saying all this. Let me again look back into Hinduism, because to accept something is right, let me first confirm that my religion was wrong. So I wasn't going to like, okay, you say this is the way, and I say, okay, yes, I'm going to accept it. No, I was not that type. So I wanted to be sure.
Okay, we're going to hold it there for a break. Don't go away, stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now, before the break, Brother Abdullah, you had just started to tell how you had all the answers given to you by this friend of yours, and you went onto the internet and you were searching, and you said it's amazing that there are so many wrong websites out there, but Allah guided you to the right websites. And that made you start to think, before I, take any decision, let me make sure that Hinduism isn't, the true religion as such. So please carry on.
So at this point of time, I came across this book called "O Hindu Awake," written by a Hindu.
Oh yeah, I know that one, yeah.
And it cleared certain doubts that I had in the mind, and I was shocked. And was this the religion that I was following? And were these the gods that I was worshipping? And the stories that I read over there. And then it took me like 3 months to overcome the ego. So in between, what happened? The friend who was talking to me about Islam, he told me, Ashish, this is the Quran. I want to learn my Quran. He told me he wants to learn the Quran. So I thought, this guy wants to know his book. Let me explain it to him, because it was the different way of the Dao, and that type of English was there in that Quran. So I started reading it, and I was explaining it to him that this is what your Quran says. I was hoping that I'll find some faults, and I'll try to bring him towards Hinduism. And every verse that I read, it was like you can say electricity passing through the body. I could feel that. But then I didn't want to show it to him, because if I show it to him, then I'm losing the debate. So I read more of it and I explained to him, and deep within me I was realizing this is the truth.
And that's amazing, because we see so many stories of people who are very active Muslims calling to Islam now, and we see, there's so many of them, we find out that they used to be Christian missionaries or even Hindu missionaries, and they were reading the Quran to say, I'm going to read this Quran, I'm going to find all the mistakes, and I'm going to be able to refute the Muslims and win the argument and convince them to become to my way of life, to my religion. And so many of them said, I kept going through the Quran, and every time I'm finding out that, hey, I'm the one who's wrong. I'm the one who doesn't have the answers, and they end up becoming Muslim, So very similar to your story.
And like he was talking about, the main thing that he was focusing on was Tawheed. He was talking about why Muslims worship one God, who is this one God, and why should you worship this one God. He wasn't getting more into the issues of for marriages and all the other things, because when people give da'wah, if they try to counter-argue all these doubts that people have in their mind, they'll never accept it unless and until they know that Allah is the one who created them. Because this is the foundation, this is on which everything else is built upon. So, like if you don't know 1 + 1 is equal to 2, you wouldn't know that E is equal to MC squared. So, he tried to focus more on Tawheed and telling me about Allah, who is Allah, what He wants from me, what am I supposed to do. He gave me this book called, it was similar to Brief Illustrated Guide to Understanding Islam. Not the same book, but it was similar to it.
Maybe it's the key guide to understanding Islam.
Yeah, it was
very similar.
Yeah. So I took that book, I read from the first word till the last word, cover to cover. I was hoping to find something wrong, some errors in it. SubhanAllah, the number of scientific miracles that are present in the Quran, it amazed me. These are just proves that this is from Allah. This is not from anybody else, because there's a verse in Surah Qiyamah which talks about, does man think that he'll not be resurrected? Verily he'll be resurrected to the tips of his fingers. Now this Quran that was revealed 1400 years back in the desert of Arabia, and when there was no internet, no communication, speaks about man being resurrected till the tips of his fingers. And just few hundred years back we came to know every person has a different fingertip. This amazed me, that how can somebody come up with this? This cannot be from man, or this cannot be from somebody who tried to collect some information, as they say.
And I remember similarly when, after I became Muslim and I started learning more, and I again came across some of these, as such scientific miracles. And I remember what really struck me was the whole one that talks about embryology, and how the baby develops, and we know that in the Western world, meaning the ones that aren't generally Muslim countries, because a lot of the Muslims knew, because they're reading the Quran, that something that's been discovered by using ultrasound scan and by using powerful microscopes only 50, 60 years ago has been described in the stage that it's like a clot that's hanging and it looks like a leech, then it becomes like a chewed piece of meat. And it's discovered now with the modern technology that stage in the fetus is, it looks like a piece of meat that has it looks like a human has chewed it. And Allah says it's a mudgha, a chewed piece of meat. And then it goes through the whole process in such detail. So much so that even one of the top embryologists, Keith Moore, whose books are used in the best universities in America and Canada and the West, he actually became a Muslim when he read this, which is it's impossible. You cannot find any Greek philosopher, you cannot find any person in medicine up until 60 years ago with these kind of ultrasound scans, that they came even close to knowing this. How could a man, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who couldn't read and write, he spent a lot of his life as a shepherd, a Bedouin in the desert, had never traveled around the world, how could he have known such information?
So he started answering more of my questions, and it took me like 3 months to overcome this ego. And one fine day I decided, let me just tell him that I accept that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. And I told him this, that I believe that Allah is the one who created me and He is the only true God worthy of worship. But then he didn't know what next. So we started going for Jummah Salah, and I started learning a bit about Islam and Salah and all that. But life didn't change, because I had planned that I believe in one God, I'll keep it in my heart, and I won't change. I'll just believe in one God, that's it. And I'll not tell my parents, I'll not tell anybody around, I'll pray in secret, because Allah knows everything that's in your heart. Even if you think about it, Allah comes to know what you're going to think about it. So I thought, let me keep it between myself and Allah and let nobody else come to know about it. However, we plan and Allah plans, and Allah is the best planner. And I decided to move to a different place.